The different ways to move to stay relaxed. Yeah.
Yep. I'm not a pianist. I'm a singer.
Ah, interesting.
Yes, but I love piano. I love playing via piano because I want to connect with myself by piano to piano. Yeah. And but I want to one question for you.
Sure.
What happened in your mind right before start playing silence and imaginary or inner rhythm?
So before you start, what is going on? Okay, this is a very interesting question because almost everyone that I see play starts in a little bit of a wrong way. Starts scared. Scared. You know, is the note going to come out right? And people wait until they're ready to play. Okay, now I'm ready to play. But I think this is wrong. It's not the best way. The best way is you have to have a non-technical thing in your mind when you begin. If it's the sadness of the elegy that we heard, you can't worry about, is this going to be right? It's got to be, think of the emotion of the piece. And then you've got to do something physical, which is you've got to sink into the keys. You cannot control it. You've got to sink, not sing, but sink. Sink meaning you've got to dive deeply into the keys. You cannot play on the surface. Feel the bottom of that note. And that's one thing that is, you want to get to the next note because you're afraid you're not going to get it in time, but you've got to. So you've got to relax, you've got to breathe out. And one of the things I see pianists do is they want to start, but you've got to do like a conductor.
Is it beginner for mind or body or technique?
It comes from breathing. It comes from a kind of exhale. Depends on what the beginning of the piece is. If the beginning of the piece is suddenly I'm starting, then you have to embody that idea. The idea of the piece is that I begin suddenly.
How can I learn the idea?
This is where you need to be an actor. And it's not that you need to act, but that you need to embody, you need to be able to look at the music, look at the dynamics, look at the title of the piece, and know the piece a little bit so that you know the feeling of this piece. What is interesting about this piece? Does it start suddenly? Does it start quietly? Does it start with a crazy way? And then you've got to be that. You've got to do that. The composer Liszt, who I talk about a lot, he was really interesting because he didn't teach technique. He didn't teach about how to play piano, although he was probably the best pianist of all time. He would say to a student a piece about something beautiful. Say I want to play Clair de Lune. Right? He would say, okay, how to play that beautifully. The student would be having trouble. He wouldn't say, okay, you've got to raise your wrist more. You've got to play more softly. He would say, go outside right now. Look at the sky. What are you feeling? I read a story that the student of Liszt, Liszt told him, do you see the sunset outside right now? Play the sunset. be the sunset. It's beautiful. So Liszt's idea is that the emotion, if you are in touch with the emotion of the music, it will come out of your voice, of your fingers.
The same voice, the finger, the same key.
It comes from the same place.
Yes, simply,
Now, it comes from the idea that if you are thinking technically, you will sound technical. If you are thinking about something beautiful or an idea, you will use your instincts. So this is all about using your instincts rather than using your mind. Our mind is not good for music. Our mind is good for practicing. But for performing, you don't want to be thinking about controlling what you're doing. You want to be thinking about something that makes you use your instincts, which is getting in touch with the emotion of what's going on. Breathing normally. Feeling normal, which is why you need to relax. The emotion needs to flow naturally. Yeah.
And the last question.
Sure.
Yeah, and in your view, where does true expression come from? Technique, emotion, or rhythm?
Where does expression come from?
Technique, emotion, or rhythm?
Yeah. Where does
in your view?
Yeah.
Where does true expression come from?
Where does expression come from?
Yeah.
Expression first starts with the feeling.
The feeling.
It doesn't start from the technique. The technique comes from the expression.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
The expression first.
It has to be that way. It's why children can sometimes play piano very naturally, and adults cannot. Now, if you've seen a lot of adult students that are in their first years playing piano like I have, they cannot use their instincts to play. They don't know how to use their instincts. They've lost their instincts. Children, however, you do not need to tell children you need to hold your finger this way unless they have learned the wrong way. Maybe from another teacher or maybe from their mom or dad, they've copied the wrong way. But if you just tell the children, play the C, they just do that. They don't think about it, but that is exactly right what they do.
Like my son.
So sometimes I tell students who have been stuck in a very systematic way of playing, you say, okay, you want to play a chord? Play it as quick, just don't look at the piano. Now turn to the piano and play without thinking. You know, they want to do something like this, but they didn't know. I had a teacher do this with me. I was having trouble. He wanted me to play more naturally, more instinctually, and I couldn't do it. And he just kept making me do it over and over again. He said, now stop, just play that one chord. Take your hands off the piano, put them on the piano, and until I did it without thinking about it, he made me do it over and over again. It's hard to let go of wanting to control, but it will help our technique as singers, as pianists, if we learn to just do it. Now, that's not easy to do. So, what I was going to talk about actually today was exactly this idea. How do you get back in touch with the instincts of, I feel this piece is sad and I want to convey that? How do you physically do that without feeling like you're controlling, you're doing it technically? How do you do it really? Which has been sort of my ambition in life, is to do what Liszt did. And people say when Liszt played, he was the feeling. It's not that he showed the feeling on his face, but when he played, how he played was the feeling. Now, I was going to talk about how Liszt didn't teach how to do this. He just tried to convey what the feeling was. And he thought, okay, if you're a talented student and you are truly artistic inside, you will make it happen. But what's interesting is Liszt's piano students, of which there were many, Liszt had many piano students who they would go to play. He never charged a single dollar for piano lessons. People would come to play for him from all over the world. I read the diary recently of a woman who came from America in 1872, 1871, to go tour Europe and study with the great pianists of Europe. And she studied with all of them, and she finally went to Liszt. Very interesting to read. And she said that Liszt, when he played, it was so inspiring to watch him play, because he made it look like, you could do that. It's not that he was so amazing that he made you feel small. It's that he was so brought out the spirit of the music that he gave you the feeling that you could do the same. And I think sometimes good teachers can bring out the best in their students in this way. But it was Liszt's students who began to explore ways of conveying Liszt's style of playing through more than just imagination and emotion, but actually talking about physically what to do and how Liszt played physically. So one thing that Liszt's students taught was that when you have big things, you need to lift your arms. They said Liszt did this. That when Liszt, he made a big feeling because he did big physical things. He didn't play properly. So as musicians, we cannot think about following our teachers. Sometimes we have to think about, don't do it because the teacher said it's right. You have to do it because you have something big to say, which is why I work with the people a lot when they play the last chord of a piece. Are they giving it themselves entirely to it? Now, my teacher was a student of one of Liszt's, no, a student of one of Liszt's. So Liszt's student taught my teacher's teacher. That's 4 teachers back from me is Liszt. Now, if you've ever taught, you've taken voice lessons a lot, when you teach, I'm sure you will teach the same things that you were taught, that you found very useful and helpful. So if you have a good teacher, you pass on. And maybe, I know some of you in the room are teachers as well. I'm sure you teach what your teachers taught. It's very interesting, the lineage, Liszt to Liszt student, to then another student, then to my teacher. How much they still say this comes from Liszt. My teacher would tell me this comes from Liszt, this idea. To play this way. Now, one of the first things Liszt's student taught was that when you have a trill, and then on the piano a trill, or a broken chord, when you have a broken chord, you need, depending on the context of the piece, there are infinite amounts of ways to play something. There are infinite amounts of ways to trill. So first enemy of interpretation is rules. You need to play a trill this speed. You need to play a broken chord this way. These are the enemies of interpretation of music. What does the piece ask for? What is the feeling of the piece and the broken chord? What meaning does it have in that moment? Liszt said, you can start slowly and accelerate towards the end. It could be sudden. It could slow down towards the end. There's an infinite amount of ways to do things. So that's the first thing is you've got to eliminate all the rules of playing and think about what is the gesture, what is the idea, what is the emotion, what is the context of the piece, where did it come from, where is it going? And that starts to make you a more creative musician. So don't follow, the score is not the rule that you need to follow. The score is pointing you, it's giving you clues to a feeling, to an idea that you want to capture. So that's the first thing that you taught me. So many ways to play piano. Don't follow the rules. The second thing he taught was you need to be relaxed. When Liszt played, from shoulder to elbow to wrist, it was completely fluid. Now this is different than a lot of the way a lot of modern pianists play, which is very strong, but very controlled. Liszt played quite differently. He played, they said, with very long fingers. So my teacher taught me, you start every motion of piano playing from the neutral, relaxed position. The neutral, relaxed position of the hand in piano playing is this. So you start from here. You don't start from here. When you curl the fingers inward and you begin the piano playing this way, you've already started with a tense motion. It's funny, when I do that, my hand starts to shake a little bit. You take away your power. When you start like this, you have a power to do this. Open hand. Now, what is an instinctual movement? Say you want to grab something. Do you go like this? You want to grab a pencil. So sometimes when I teach, I think, and I want students to regain their instincts, I think about non-piano things first. Think about, okay, now you want to reach for a note. What do? Instinctual movement to the piano. No. Now, sometimes piano music calls for tension. It calls for a variety of sounds. Okay, you are free to sometimes do that, but that's not the neutral. The neutral is simple. So restoring a sort of simplicity and instinct in piano playing. Another image I use, besides the grabbing the pencil, which we do without thinking about, is how do you shut a door? There's a door over there, but you all know how you shut a door and how easy it is to shut a door if you put the pads of your fingers on the door and you give a little push from your arm. You could slam the door, you could nudge the door. Now what happens if you put your fingers on the door and then lift them and strike the door? What amount of control do you have for pushing the door a long way or a short way? I could do it here. I can't move it if I lift my fingers and strike. That's what I get. Now, I have infinite power if I do this, and it comes from here. I just have the pads of my fingers. It is said that Chopin, there's a book, by the way, that's very good, called Chopin as Seen by His Students. Chopin played with, especially in legato playing, he played with flat fingers. There's a famous teacher in America who's passed on, Leon Fleischer, taught the same thing. Pads of the fingers for cantabile, for legato, for warm playing. It's here. It's here. One reason why is that you want to make the surface area that contacts the key as large as possible. That makes it easier to control. Think about putting a pin on the piano and controlling the piano with a pin. Very hard. It takes a lot of strength to push the pin down. But if you cover a lot of surface area, why do people wear snowshoes? In Vietnam, you don't have so much snow. But you wear snowshoes in the snow because it distributes your weight over a large area. It doesn't break the snow down. You can walk on the surface of the snow. So quiet playing. Quiet playing. So sometimes I have my students touch with the pads of the finger and move, control from the arm. Don't release the finger from the key. Now you'll find when you start using your arm to press the key and keeping your finger pad connected with the key, that what happens is you start to find the correct arm position for the arm behind each finger. It's a little bit here for the thumb, it's more here, it's for the 5, it's more here. And once you start to notice the arm shapes, the arm moving differently for each note, you begin to notice that when you play sequences of notes, the arm moves in shapes. Different shapes for each type of sequence. If you're doing that, for example, you could make circular motions. If you're starting with starting from the 5, you could go down towards it. You could do clockwise circles. You could do counterclockwise circles. There's the Chopin. You could do that 2 ways. You could do that this way, or you could do it this way. But it's all about movement, keeping loose, using arm movements, whether it's a sort of forward movement or a back movement, arm momentum to press down the key as you're playing. So then we don't have to worry about strengthening our fingers. I mean, it's important to practice with fingers also. It's important to, but why? Why do we also need to practice with fingers? Because when you're practicing, part of your practicing is you are sending a signal to your brain of what finger to use next. So sometimes I think it's a little bit misleading that we practice for strength. It's so much as we practice for making, solidifying neurological patterns. So it is important that you do signal that the second finger is next. The 4th finger is next. The 5th finger is next. And I do that by lifting the finger. Now, I don't lift the finger independently. That's the thing. I don't keep my wrist down here. What I practice, and what I practice with my students is, when your finger lifts, does your arm follow? And I think this is really, really important. And when you're practicing, ask yourself, when you lift your finger to play the next note, what does your arm do? Because if you watch children, and children have very small hands, but they do everything right. Children do a lot of stuff like that, right? Now, when they lift their finger, they open their hand, and their arm, their entire arm, moves. Look at children, they move their arms like this. They're not like us. They're not stiff. They're not subtle about their arm movements. They are from the shoulder. All the way, it connects all the way to the shoulder. So a lot of this technique that Arau taught, which he said comes from Liszt's student, is about reconnecting the finger to the rest of the body. And I think this is the biggest problem amongst pianists. If you're a violinist, yeah, you need to work on relaxation and technique and stuff, but it's more easy to feel connected with your shoulder. You're doing this. Singing, you're using your whole body to sing. Pianists can play this way. Now that's dangerous. you see, did anyone watch the Chopin competition? A lot of very fine players. But as someone who's taught students at the college level for many years, and who's kept in touch with students who have since become adults, who become teachers themselves, sometimes this way of playing is not sustainable. What you'll find, I see a lot of the pianists at the Chopin competition who play, wow, technique amazing. I doubt they will be able to do the same thing 10 years later. 20 years later, no. And you even see it amongst famous pianists. Horowitz is a famous example of someone who stopped playing, Glenn Gould. People who could do what they do up to a certain point, and then it stopped working. And they had back problems, they had arm problems. There's no shame in having physical problems as a pianist, but you need to start working on reconnecting what you're doing here with what you're doing here. So, practicing is a lot about not only doing the finger motions, but about connecting the finger motions to the bigger muscles. So I do a lot of, now it's slow, but I make sure that when I lift my finger, this follows. This follows. Now, then you want to play groups of notes. Then you want to play da 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 da. And you want to make sure that your arm follows from beginning of the group to the end of the group. Now, in the end, these motions will become smaller. But when you're practicing, you want to figure out what is the most, like with the one girl, what did she play in the list? You need to play that very quickly, in circles. Now she tried to play with the fingers there. And it came out, it was not as fast as she wanted it to be. It was not as smooth and flowing as she would have liked. But once you start learning that, okay, you can play first of all you practice each finger at a time, sure. But then, if you know about groups, and this kind of group I would call a circle. Imagine the thumb is the sort of the 7 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 8 o'clock, and then going around to 3 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 11 o'clock. Now, one of the most important things about when you start to practice with playing with the arm with shapes is that you don't let the finger come off the key. This is very important. It is said of Liszt's playing that his fingers never left the keys. Unless he wanted to do something really big, he would do this. But it said that his fingers glided over the keys. They did not lift. And there were, in one of the diaries of his students, he criticized one of his students for lifting their finger off of the note while playing and breaking the connection with the piano. So this idea that you keep the fingers in contact, in some sense the fingers are resting in the keys while you are playing. So you are not here, and the piano is not here, but you are here. And then, okay, you begin from a relaxed position. You begin from, your fingers are actually resting there. So, I tell my students, okay, if you can't do that to strike the 5, what kind of arm motion can you make to play that 5? Okay, one you could do, you could go down. You could just do that. You could also, if you want to go to the 4 next, you've got to do something like that. So in that sense, you're playing. And now this is a very natural thing to do, is to play in this direction. Do any of you know the pianist Dr Olsen? Pianist Dr Olsen was the chairman of the jury for the Chopin competition. He was a student of Claudio Arrau. He probably if you watch him play, probably one of the most easy techniques. He can play the most brilliant things with the littlest effort. I asked him, because I also studied with an Arrau student, and the Arrau students kind of keep in touch. I had the opportunity to ask him, what about your technique, this way of playing, how much of it comes from what Arrau taught you? And he said, 80%. 80% of the way he plays is entirely from what Arrau taught him about arm weight, relaxation, arm movements. 80% of what he does now is from that, and then 20% is his own ideas. But he was very, very clear in attributing everything he could do now to learning relaxation, learning different arm movements at the piano. Of course, he was very talented, but he had a teacher that taught him these things. Well, the thing that one of the things he told me is that the fingers move backwards. The fingers play this way. You don't play so much the fingers straight down. I saw a lot of students today play straight down. Now this is not the easiest way to play. If you use the gravity would make your arms go in what direction? This direction. It falls back towards your body. So if you use gravity as part of the way you play, then you play now. You can practice this, you can practice making this a natural motion, but the point is that you prepare by going up and then you fall by going down. Now, another thing that matches with what Liz said about big chord playing is that when you have a big chord, you need to lift the arms very high. And now we're getting very technical. Okay, lift the arms very high. Okay, I can lift my arms like this, but is that the right idea? No. You don't just lift your arms. You lift your arms with the feeling of, I'm going to do something very big. And with the emotion of, here. So it's not, okay, lift your arms. And a lot of students who follow the teacher very well, okay, I did what you asked, teacher. I lifted my arms. No, you lifted your arms, but you lifted your arms without any feeling of, and this goes back to another thing that Liz said, which is very interesting, is that technique comes from the inside first. Mm-hmm. So, that's the technique. And that's something that how many teachers now work with their students on connecting their technique with something inside? Yeah. That's so hard. I mean, I was lucky. I found 2 teachers who taught that because they had both studied with the same pianist, Claudio Arrau.
Depend on the experience life, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Is it quite difficult for the children to learn piano?
It's difficult. If you meet even famous pianists, I just mentioned Dr Olsen. I also have talked with Christian Zimmermann. The greatest pianists alive talk about piano like it's very difficult. I heard Christian Zimmermann play the Chopin Third Sonata, and I told him, I'm working on the Second Sonata. And he said, oh, Second Sonata, very difficult. I don't like to play the Second Sonata now because it's very difficult. These are the greatest pianists in the world. So yes, we need to acknowledge that playing piano, singing well, these are mountains to conquer for everyone. And if you meet someone that says, that's easy, they either are lying or they don't play well because they think they can do it so easily. They're probably not putting anything deep into it. They're mechanical if they think it's that easy. But this is returning a pianism, returning it to a mission of, I have something artistically to say. And all impulses for playing and what we do at the piano coming from that. Very hard to do. Very hard to do. But the work starts with simply getting yourself back in touch with your instincts. So, again, talking about the fingers' gravity, using gravity to help you. Okay, first you need to go up before you go down. So when you need to play something big, that's why one of the easiest things for me to teach is, okay, you've got to lift before you play. You cannot start from here and play loud well. You know, it needs that first, which is instinctual, but a lot of us pianists, we hit sometimes. Now, you see, here's some things you don't want to do as a pianist. You don't want to do this. For one thing, you're cutting off all your energy at your elbow. So you're stiff. You are disconnecting yourself from the instrument. You are not going deeply into it. You are playing as if it is a hot fire and you need to. So I see a lot of people want to play very crisply. Now the way I was taught, where you play staccatos with more of a shaking action of your arm. It's a more dancing sort of sound, which I think is often what we want in staccato playing, rather than a sharp, quick release. Although maybe we do want occasionally, if we're musicians and we're interpreters, occasionally we do want a tense effect in music. Okay, we can do something tense. But it comes from, okay, I want that to be the effect here, rather than this is my way of playing. So, yeah, first of all, here, people cut off the energy here. Another place people cut off energy is their wrist. And this is the first thing that you need to learn, is that it's okay to lift the wrist. It's okay. You don't need to keep it here. You don't need to keep this ball here. And the first thing my teacher told me at my first piano lesson was, I asked him, what hand position should I use to play piano? And he said, your first mistake is that you think there is a hand position for playing piano. That's wrong. Piano only has different situations and different problems to solve physically. So, okay, if you're going to play this, you start with a low hand position, but you go here, your hand position needs to be high. So, there's no hand position that fits every situation. It's constantly changing. From note to note, it is changing. You play your thumb down. Okay, here's my hand position for playing the thumb. Then you want to go up to 2. 2 is there. The wrist is much higher. You want to go up to your 5. Your hand position might be here. Or say you want to make an accent on 5. You might go down on 5. Your hand position. So you could play any single note on the piano with any number of hand positions depending on the context, depending what you came from, depending on what kind of sound you want, what kind of emphasis you want. Often you want an accent, okay, you go down on the note. You give a strong. But if I just want a beautiful sound there, okay, I go up to 5. Or you can go down on the 5 there. Or you could shoot up with the arm into the note. So one of the things that I like about this technique, it's not really a technique, first of all. It's a flexibility and a freedom of doing whatever your body instinctually feels communicates the music, what needs to be said. You can do it. There's freedom. There's no rules. And one of the things you might have noticed is when I play loudly on 5, actually I use the side of my 5th finger, which would be very wrong in a lot of piano schools, right? Which is, no, your 5th finger needs to be strong here. Talk with Dr. Olsen. He played when he plays the Emperor Concerto. He goes to the 5, the side of his 5th finger. Now, according to a lot of conservatories, now I went to a conservatory, I love music conservatories, but Liszt thought negatively about conservatories because he thought it's places where people learn training piano. This is how you have to do things. But Dr. Olsen said, no. Why do I need to do that? I'm gonna whack that note on the side of my finger, because if I play it on the side of my finger, it feels really good, and I never miss it, and it sounds really good. So there's a lot of freedom. And so as a teacher, I feel like I want my students to find their own solutions to a lot of problems. Find different ways of moving that come from their idea. Now, most of them need a lot of help reconnecting with their body. So you work with them on, okay, loosening up the arms. We practiced a lot dropping. This, which is, how do you release tension? Pianists don't practice this enough. But sometimes I stand up, even before I'm going to play it. Just this. Now, this is a little bit the same process of how do you go to the piano and you want to play a big chord. You release the tension into the piano the same way you relax into it. You let it into the piano. And so yeah, I work with students on that. Another thing, more specifically, just to say a couple minutes about the different movements. I talked about a little bit, you can move in circles, depending on the finger lengths, right? You follow the lengths of the fingers. You follow that, but you could also do rotational. So rotational is, okay, I'm touching the notes with my fingers, but how do I send the arm energy to each note in sequence? Well, it requires a kind of striking the notes from the side. So, say we've got the Chopin Black Key Etude. Now, I didn't lift my fingers off the piano at all. I'm not doing that. I'm keeping my pads of my fingers, and I'm finding a way to use the bouncing. I play this one and it bounces me back, so that you begin to use the momentum of playing to... Now, what you work with students on is making sure that the arm, when you go to this side of the hand, the arm goes this way, so the weight of the arm goes here. When you go to the thumb side of the weight goes here, because that shifts the weight of the arm to the thumb side of the hand. So and you just practice making sure that you can keep it. Eventually, after you practice, because Chopin etudes, you can't just do this right away. You need to first get the arm motion in coordination with the direction of the energy you want to send into the piano. But then it feels like you shake the notes out. And that's also what trills are. It feels like this. It should feel like this in the end. Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to be loose enough to do that. But if you go far enough in the direction of loosening up and keeping your fingers in contact with the keys, eventually you can play the piano. And hopefully you've also developed your finger. As a student, you've probably developed your fingers enough that you don't. Finger strength is not what you need, but connecting your finger back with your arm. So I talked about the up and down motions, up, down. Accents, you can push forward if you want strong accents or sudden accents. You can use rotational movements and then also circular movements. And there's also a kind of a vibration. So not only a up-down, but a fast up-down. Liszt, in many of Liszt's pieces, Liszt actually writes the word vibrato. Now, what does that mean for pianists? Vibrato.
Vibrato on piano?
Vibrato on piano, and it's always when he wants a repeated chord or repeated octave played very quickly. He says vibrato. Now, Liszt is, I think, and this is what my teacher told me, who he said came from Liszt, is that a vibration is you are vibrating from your arms into the piano, and it's just like an earthquake into the piano, you know? So it's a physical idea Liszt put into the music. Here is vibration. Now, disconnecting with the key this way does not allow for that sort of.
Oh, wait, is it vibrato on piano?
Yeah, you need this sort of. You need a higher wrist. I talked about there's no position on piano, but a lot of these things work better when the wrist can be not. Here you lose the connection with the arm a little bit. Here. So sometimes you feel a little bit like you are a marionette. Do any of you know what a marionette is? A puppet with strings. So another exercise I do with some students is I say your elbows are tied to a string, rising up, and then you cut. So these things become small when you practice them for a long time, but you've got to, as Liszt said, you've got to make, sometimes you have to make the physical motion very big to capture that in yourself when you're not used to doing that. You've got to conjure the feeling of doing something big when you're shy. You meet a lot of piano students that are shy. Like I think I taught at least two today that were quite shy. They don't feel comfortable with doing big things at the piano. They want to do things right. But this is what I do. I make them do it very, very big and develop the sense of freedom. One thing that Arau did with his students, which is very interesting, is he'd make them carry weighted balls, quite large, and toss them around to get the sense of natural movement. Throwing big balls around like this to get a sense of natural movement. I recently taught a student, when I was in Bangkok, I taught a student who was so in a bad place. And he was young, very young, and a very, very, I think he could not continue playing like that very much longer. But he asked me, you know, is it because I need to practice more? And I said, I think what you need is to do something physical outside of the piano, outside of the home. I got the sense that maybe, you know, he's in the practice room all the time. I said, I think it would be better if you devoted some of your time to doing a sport than to doing piano. Just get back in touch with physical movement, because you're sitting here all day at the piano and you're working away, and then you go home, maybe you're on your phone, you're losing your instincts. So it's dangerous. It's better sometimes to learn dancing than to spend more time playing piano, or to do any sort of physical sport. I think the reason why I find all of this important now, and I was lucky enough to learn this from my teachers. This is not coming from me, this is coming from my teachers. And I thought it was so useful to myself that I need to pass this along to other people, because I think it's so rare to listen to advice like this. But I think more and more in the modern times, we are less in touch with our physical instincts than we've ever been. If you listen to pianist recordings from 100 years ago, it's so much freer. It's so different than how people play today. Now, there are so many talented people, talented children out there, that they manage to work their way through very awkward techniques and sound brilliant. They are brilliant despite their technique, not because of their technique. I think it's important that we learn to get back in touch with the old way of playing. Just watch, you can watch on YouTube, you can watch the old pianists. They're very physical in a different way than pianists these days. So, does anyone have any questions about anything that I've talked about? The whole idea, feel free to tell me I'm wrong also, because I think it's important to acknowledge that there is not one right way to play piano. There are many ways to play piano. Anyone have any thoughts, any questions?
Yeah, dear professor, if you could teach one lesson to young pianists about breathing or awareness, what could it be?
To teach one lesson about breathing?
About breathing and awareness.
Awareness.
Yeah.
I think I'm not an expert on breathing. I just know that you have to keep breathing.
Keep breathing,
Yeah. And that it is important to work on making sure you're breathing when you're playing, and to just exhale. Yeah. There was one girl that played. It was interesting. I asked her to lift her arms to play that chord, and she did it without breathing. And then I said, lift more, and suddenly she went, and she breathed. And I said, okay, you got in touch with something. You made yourself breathe. You made yourself do something natural. That's good. So yeah.
Thank you.
Awareness, practicing awareness is like practicing meditation, right? Meditation can be useful. Meditation, you can go, because meditation helps your focus. Yeah, that's good.
Do you practice meditation?
I have in the past. I don't now.
Yeah. But playing piano is the same as meditation.
I did, about 20 years ago, I practiced meditation, and I'll tell you the reason why. I practiced meditation because that was the first time in my life, it was about 20 years ago, no, 22 years ago, the first time in my life where I was playing big concerts.
Oh, yeah.
When I was playing concerts that were not student recitals, but were People were paying to come. You know, concerts where a lot of people paid to come, and the newspaper wrote about them. And I felt like this was a hard thing to do mentally. To deal with the pressure of, I wanna do good, I wanna perform well, but I'm feeling anxiety. I did meditation to calm my anxiety and to learn breathing. Yeah, I think it's important.
Do you believe that mindfulness can improve tone quality and touch control?
Tone quality and touch control?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You believe it?
Of course.
Oh,
Yes, everyone can.
thank you
Yes.
so much.
Yeah.